So we're yet to have a single free practice session in 2022, and we've already had 2 different drivers testing positive for COVID. Firstly, Daniel Ricciardo of McLaren, who subsequently missed all of the Bahrain test, which, while not as directly impactful as missing races, is still a setback. He's now back into the F1 paddock and was quoted saying, "I'm glad to be back, feeling ready for the Bahrain Grand Prix. I was disappointed not to be in the car last week, but despite being unwell, I've been able to keep in touch with the team, chat to Lando about the car and prepare as best I can for the race." Then this morning, Sebastian Vettel tested positive as well, which means he's going to miss at least 1 race, potentially more. In this case, if the Aston Martin turns out to be somewhat competitive, then it could directly cost him points, as the team have decided to put Nico Hülkenberg in the car for Bahrain, stating that replacing him in the AMR22 will be reserve driver Nico Hülkenberg, who will be in the car from FP1 onwards. Weirdly enough, I did predict Hülkenberg to replace Vettel, just not this soon, and while I'm glad to see Nico back, it's a shame it's under these circumstances, but still, who'd have thought we'd get to see these 2 back in F1 for the first race of the season?
Once again, most unsportive driver of the grid.
My balls, mate.
Yeah, they're really good, man.
But the fact Vettel will miss time had me thinking about the potential impact on the championship. Take last year for example, we saw how just a few points can really make the difference, and if we overlay the situation from 2020 where Lewis Hamilton missed the penultimate race, then it becomes even more apparent. If in 2021 Hamilton missed the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, Verstappen likely wins and the title is over then and there. And that's just looking at the top teams. Over the past 2 years, we've had 4 other drivers miss races because of COVID. Lance Stroll and Sergio Perez in 2020, and then Kimi Raikkonen in 2021, along with Nikita Mazepin in Abu Dhabi, although that last one is probably a little bit less impactful. But you can make the argument that in some of those situations, it did impact the championship for certain teams. At the end of 2020, Racing Point missed out on 3rd by just a few points, and while Hülkenberg did a great job when replacing Lance Stroll at the Nürburgring, eventually finishing 8th, he started from last as qualifying was his first time in the car that weekend. So maybe if he had a bit more time, he'd have started higher and then finished higher as well. That's obviously all in the past, but it does help remind teams and fans how impactful positive cases can be, and that's before looking at the longer term impacts. For example, Lewis Hamilton has said multiple times about how impactful the longer term effects can be. Just look at some of the races last year and how exhausted he was after them. Probably most obvious in Hungary, where he was struggling to stand on the podium and needed support from Ocon next to him. Obviously it affects everyone differently in the short term and long term, but the potential issues are there. Another interesting side to all of this was Martin Brundle saying to Sky Sports News about how this year the paddock has got rid of bubbles and masks in a lot of areas, and that teams may well want to change their approach given 2 drivers testing positive in such a short space of time. Even with the team, drivers are in contact with so many people, and with less restrictions it becomes easier to catch something. Which then leads back to the question, could COVID decide the F1 championship? And after the past couple of weeks it's probably changed from a yeah maybe to yeah it definitely could, and maybe if not right at the top, then somewhere in the midfield where the standings are usually even tighter. Ultimately, I think the situations for Ricciardo and Vettel will act as reminders to teams about how anyone can catch something at any time, and also I'm obviously wishing Seb a quick recovery. Anyways, that's all for now. Make sure to give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed or found it useful, and subscribe for more F1 content, but until next time, take care.